along with the Child Care is Essential Act, which I introduced with Chairman Bobby Scott, for $15 billion to save the child care industry, and then my legislation to make the child tax credit fully refundable, to make it accessible to all, including the one-third previously excluded, including half of Black and Latinx children. I am proud of the provisions to increase the maximum SNAP benefit by 15%, to aid nutrition programs, food banks, farmers and producers, as well as small businesses and restaurants. So let us put politics second. Let us put people first. Let us vote yes on this relief bill for the people of this country, for the seniors, for the children, and those who every day are looking toward the federal government because they are in desperate shape and they need our help. They need this legislation. I yield back.
Gentlelady from Texas. Reserves.
I yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from Maryland, the Majority Leader, Mr. Hoyer.
The gentleman is recognized. The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in strong support of this legislation. I've heard my Republican friends lament the fact that we have things in this bill that they don't like, and apparently that the Senate doesn't like. I've been here long enough to know and to serve when the Republicans were in charge. They passed bill after bill with partisan provisions that they knew President Obama wouldn't sign and that they could not pass the United States Senate because they couldn't get enough Democrats to get to 60 votes. They knew that. So both sides passed legislation that they think is good, notwithstanding the fact that the other side does not agree with some of the provisions in the bill. But, Mr. Speaker, this bill responds to the needs of the American people at a time of crisis. The House passed the HEROES Act more than 4.5 months ago. Normally, what would happen was when a bill goes to the Senate, they would pass a bill of their own unless they believed, ladies and gentlemen of America, you're on your own. And states, as Senator McConnell said, you can go bankrupt. The minority leader of this House said, let's wait and see what happens. And we waited. And we waited, and we waited, and 120,000 additional Americans died since May 15th. How long are we going to wait? The House did its job in May for the American people, yet the Republican Senate and President Trump have still not done theirs. And they talk about compromise on that side of the aisle and working together. And so what did the Republican leader of the Senate do? There was a $1 trillion offer on the table, so he came back with a compromise and cut it in half to $500. And the only reason that bill got a majority of the United States Senate, Republicans didn't get a majority of the United States, it did because there are enough Republicans, is because they thought it wouldn't go anywhere. It was a message bill. That's the only reason it passed. With 51, didn't pass, of course, because it needed 60. Now let me tell you what John Boehner did and what Paul Ryan did when the Freedom Caucus wouldn't give you the votes, Mr. Speaker, for the Republicans to pass legislation that they knew was needed. the debt limit, fiscal bills. They knew they were needed. So what did John Boehner do? He walked across the aisle, talked to the Speaker, talked to me, and said, we need some votes. And we made a deal. And the chair, or the ranking member of the Appropriations Committee, is one of those people who wants the House to work. I'm a friend of hers, and I respect her because she is a member that I've experienced who wants to make it work. But Senator McConnell doesn't walk across the aisle and say, let's make a compromise. So don't preach at us, Mr. Speaker. Don't preach at us about reaching across the aisle. We've seen tax bills that slam, bam, there it goes. And so you come up with a bill. Negotiations are ongoing right now, and I want to congratulate the Speaker of the House. She's been in Washington more than any of the rest of us in the last 6 months. I know that because I talk to her on a regular basis, trying to get this to work, trying to make a deal. And I applaud Secretary Mnuchin. There's some others who don't make deals and who have a history of not making deals and have a history of undermining deals that Paul Ryan wanted to make or that John Boehner wanted to make, not Democrats. But negotiations are continuing, and I hope we will reach a bipartisan agreement. And frankly, if we had reached a bipartisan agreement yesterday, we would not have this bill on the floor. If we'd reached it the day before, we wouldn't have this bill on the floor. Because we know we want a bill signed. But we also know we want to let the American people where we stand. Not for just one bill that helps this group or that group or the other group, but all Americans who are suffering and are at risk. So we believe that this bill is a reasonable compromise. That's why today we will pass a bill that achieves the goals of the HEROES Act and represents a reasonable compromise. And you're saying to yourselves, some people, Mr. Speaker, are saying to themselves, oh, this isn't reasonable. Remember, McConnell goes from $1 trillion down to $500 billion, half a trillion, which clearly did not cover the needs. Every economist tells us that. Notwithstanding the passage of this bill, House Democrats will continue to negotiate to reach the kind of bipartisan agreement that we believe is necessary to help Americans get through this crisis. The airlines need the money now. And we ought to be that close. But our position is clear. The federal government cannot shirk its responsibilities to the people it serves. Not just some of the people. We have in this bill the help for small businesses that people on that side of the aisle have been talking about. We're talking about it. They need it. Includes support for state, local, tribal, and territorial governments. I have a letter here, and letters can be sent from the National Governors Association only if they're unanimous, which says, every major economist, regardless of party or ideological bent, came to the same conclusion after the 2007-2009 financial crisis. The lack of support for state and local government slowed the nation's economic growth for more than a decade. As we begin to recover and rebuild from COVID-19 crisis, unanimously, Republican and Democratic governors, we cannot afford to repeat the mistakes of the past, i.e. not giving aid to state and local governments. That's what the governors are saying. All of them, Republican and Democrat. My governor is a Republican. His name is Hogan. His father served here in the House of Representatives. And he is one of those who came up with Mr. Cuomo the amount of money that was needed by state and local governments. Why do we aid state and local governments? Because they hire police. We hear about defunding police. They're hemorrhaging revenues, and they cannot support the personnel they have in police, fire, emergency medical response teams, sanitation workers, nurses at public hospitals. All of these, state and local, are critical if we're going to solve the economic problem and the COVID-19 problem. While the HEROES Act provided the level of fiscal support unanimously recommended by the National Governors Association, I want to repeat that. This is not a Democratic idea. Unanimously, the governors of our states, red and blue states, said we need this money. The bill recognized the reality that faced with the Senate Republican leader who suggested the states go bankrupt, that level might not be possible. So we reduced that sum in half. Cut out $1 trillion of the proposal we thought had merit, actually $1.2 trillion. So we offer a compromise. 1 year funding, cut it in half, that which it was in the HEROES Act, yet still sufficient to get us into the next year. This legislation renews the expanded emergency unemployment insurance benefits that millions of people are relying on. And by the way, it goes to them, but what do they do with it, Mr. Speaker? They spend it in the economy at those small businesses that you're worried about. All of us are worried about. And we give a family the sustenance that they need to support themselves and the family. They go spend it. Where? Small businesses and large businesses. We give that $600 a week through the end of January 2021, which will help small businesses and the general economy. It will provide another round of direct payments to Americans of $1,200 for each individual adult and $500 for 2 eligible dependents to help families make ends meet. I think all of you have voted. There might have been a voice vote in the CARES Act, but everybody voted for it. And we're making sure college students aren't left out. Our bill offers a second round of Paycheck Protection Program to help small businesses remain viable through the pandemic and include additional support for workers in the airlines, restaurant, and live entertainment industries. It covers a whole lot of folks that need help. And for 4.5 months after we passed the bill, the Senate has not sent us a single piece of legislation, not a single piece, because Senator McConnell will not compromise so he can get votes from the Democrats, which he needs to pass a bill, just as John Boehner and Paul Ryan crossed the aisle because they needed the votes for bills they thought were critically important for our country. To help reopen the economy safely, the bill also includes $75 billion for testing and contact tracing and other public health initiatives, and it provides a lifeline to the Postal Service. Now, I know that may be objectionable to some people because they may want to see the mail delayed for whatever reasons. I want to thank Chairwoman Lowy and of the Appropriations Committee and all of the chairs and members of all of our committees who worked hard on this legislation. It includes input and contribution from many members, including many of our outstanding freshmen. This bill represents a substantial reduction, 35% reduction. I tell my friends who served on the Appropriations Committee with me, if I was in charge and we wanted to make a deal and I said, well, I'll come down 35%, they would have taken it like that. It's approximately the level of funding, somebody mentioned $2 trillion. The CARES Act was $2.2 trillion, and all of you voted for it. That was a voice vote, unanimous. So I don't know specifically whether you were here or whether you would say no, silently. I voted no. Nobody voted against it. $2.2 trillion. It's extraordinary the amount of money we're spending, Mr. Speaker. But then again, no one in this body of whatever age has experienced the crisis that America has found itself in over the last 8 months. No one. And every economist said it required the kind of response. And that's why we voted for 4 bills in a bipartisan way. But then the leadership on the other side of the aisle, Mr. Speaker, said, let's wait and see what happens. And as I said, 120,000 people have died. That's what happened. We passed an emergency supplemental appropriation bill, 415-2. We passed the Families First Act, 363-40. We passed the CARES Act by voice vote. Nobody voted against it, at least audibly. And the Paycheck Protection Program and Health Care Enhancement Act was passed on the House on April 23rd by a vote of 383-5. What's changed? The politics have changed. The needs, Mr. Speaker, have not changed. All four of those bills passed the Senate and were signed into law. Some passed by unanimous consent by the United States Senate. I urge President Trump and Senate Republicans to work with us to reach bipartisan agreement without further delay. Yes, we have differences. But we have great needs. And I agree with those on the other side of the aisle and on this side of the aisle who said we must meet those needs if we're going to keep our economy going, keep our families intact, and make sure that we have jobs for the future. Millions of American families, workers, and small business owners are looking to Congress for help. Let us, Mr. Speaker, come together, as we have 4 times. Came together, overwhelmingly said, not, this is a lot of money. It is a lot of money. I am boggled by the figures that we're dealing with. But I'm also boggled by the challenge that we confront. This bill represents a significant compromise while addressing the priorities we share. Mr. Speaker, I hope we can show the American people that we can come together to govern responsibly in this crisis and provided much-needed relief to the people we serve. People pick out individual items in this bill and, unfortunately, deeply mischaracterize some of them. Fake facts are being debated on this floor, Mr. Speaker. I don't have the time to go into all those fake facts. One of them, though, was we're defunding the police. There was $600 million in the COPS program in the HEROES bill. And then subsequently we passed a appropriation bill at $343 million. And by the way, the Senate hasn't passed a single bill to fund anything. Anything. Mr. Speaker, what did the President do? The President zero funded, if you check your budget, zero funded the COPS program. Zero funded it. Check it out. Mr. Speaker, I urge my colleagues to vote for this bill. And I guarantee you that we're going to continue tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow and try to get an agreement that we can pass the House, the Senate, and that the President will sign, because we understand the American people are in need. That is what this bill does, responds to them. If the Senate doesn't like it, have them pass a bill. Let us go to conference. Let's get it done, and we'll be here to do it every day. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. Gentlelady from Texas is recognized.
I yield the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Gonzalez, for 2 minutes.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in opposition to the legislation before us today. The gentleman was referencing the budget. We're still waiting for his budget. We'll take it whenever he's ready. Absolutely not. Let's be clear about what we are doing today. We are going to be voting on a piece of legislation that was not negotiated, will be dead on arrival in the Senate, and will do nothing for the millions of Americans who are relying on this body to find a solution. This bill before us today is about wanting the politics of the issue more than results. This is a bill that rejects $1.7 trillion in bipartisan COVID aid that will help families navigate some of the most difficult moments of their lives in favor of $0 that will help absolutely no one except for a handful of politicians who want the message more than the result. What a disgrace. And the sad truth is my colleagues know exactly what they are doing. How in good faith could they say that this legislation, which takes steps to federalize U.S. elections, that provides a tax break for millionaires and billionaires in blue states, that's right, and that directs ICE to release individuals in custody is an attempt to help their constituents, knowing full well that these provisions will not be signed into law. Just this morning, the Speaker of the House said that we are not only having a dollars debate, we are having a values debate. Well, I've heard from the people of Ohio's 16th District and many around the country at what they value since this pandemic broke out. My constituents value a Congress that puts the people over the politics. They value a Congress that could care less about which party wins or loses an election, so long as in their greatest moments of need, their government is there for them. The people are sick and tired of watching this town fight like cats and dogs over who, quote unquote, wins the day. They want to win, and they win when we do our job. That is not what is happening today, and the American people are rightly disgusted. Just 2 weeks ago, my colleagues in the Problem Solvers Caucus, with 25 members from each side of the aisle, put forward a proposal that showed that we can and should work together on a proposal that keeps our small businesses open, protects our children in schools, helps those who are still unemployed, and offers additional aid to states and localities. I heard from people across all sides of the political spectrum that this caucus and our package gave them hope that Congress could actually do something for a change. And yet here we are.
This gentleman's time has expired.
One more minute. Thank you. And yet here we are, ready to let down the people we serve yet again. Despite all of this, there remains a path forward to a solution. But it will take leadership on both sides of the aisle to cast aside their partisan hats and negotiate in good faith. And let me be clear in saying that leadership doesn't need to just come from our elected party leaders. Each member of the House has a say in how they choose to vote today. A yes vote is for the status quo, political messaging, and nothing for the American people. A no vote is a recognition that there is more work to be done and that there is still an opportunity for us to act in the best interest of our constituents. We have to deliver. It's time. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentlelady is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I am very pleased to yield 5 minutes to the distinguished gentleman from New Jersey, the chairman of the Committee on Energy and Commerce, a member of my class in the Congress, Mr. Pallone.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the chairwoman, and I really want to commend you for putting together a bill which, while it reduces the amount of money from the original HEROES Act, in my opinion, because of the lessons we've learned in the last few weeks, improves the HEROES Act because of what we've learned. And I know that's not an easy task, Madam Chair. I know that is not an easy task, what you've accomplished here today. So I want to congratulate you. But I also want to say, in response to my colleague on the other side from Ohio, this is a serious attempt to put something forward that we believe that the Republicans can support. Now, maybe they're not going to do it today, but I just want to say that our Speaker, and when I say our, I mean the Speaker, because she is, the Speaker for the entire House and the entire country, has worked so hard over the last few weeks and months to try to come together with the Republicans. She just met yesterday, and maybe even today again, with Mr. Mnuchin from the White House. And to suggest in any way that this is anything other than a serious attempt by Democrats to put forward something that we think the Republicans can ultimately adopt or come close to what they would ultimately support, I think is unfortunate, because that's what we're doing here today. I want to go back to what Speaker Pelosi said earlier when she said that what we're really trying to do is crush the virus. And I want to talk about that because much of that language that would accomplish that comes from the Energy and Commerce Committee that I chair. This is the United States of America. I know we're elected from individual districts, but we come here to represent the whole country. The fact of the matter is the only way that we can crush this virus and end this pandemic is if we work together on a national level to accomplish it. And so what we say in the HEROES Act, both the old one and the new one, is that we need a national plan, and we need a way to bring forth that national plan. What's happening now is every state competes. I get so mad when I watch the TV and they say, oh, Ohio's doing better this week or New Jersey's doing worse this week. That's not what this is about. This has to be a united effort. It's the United States of America. And that's not what we have right now. because each state is competing for testing, competing for medical supplies, deciding on an individual basis. The hospitals even compete between themselves. And that's not the way it should be. So what we say in the HEROES Act, and it's carried forth again in this legislation today, is a national plan, someone in charge at a national level, I'll call it a supply czar for the supply chain, that sets parameters, if you will, for how to crush the virus. Guidelines for the schools, how you should wear masks. Not necessarily all the details, but essentially a national plan. And then delivers the testing supplies, the medical supplies, and ultimately the vaccine. One of the things that's such an improvement in this bill is not only do we continue the $75 billion for testing and contact tracing and quarantine, but we also provide another $25 or $6 billion for distribution and development and awareness of the vaccine when it's eventually developed. Because, again, this has to be done equitably. It has to be done nationally. And that's what I really want to stress today. I don't necessarily need to use all my time, Madam Chair, because I want to stress that we have to do this together. And that's what this bill puts forward. Now, let me just say in addition to that, because I do want to mention a few other things. We have $2 billion in new funding to get essential workers their protective personnel and work equipment that they need. We also have new provisions to address insurance companies declining to cover COVID testing. In the CARES Act, we said that everyone should be able to get a test for free, no out-of-pocket expense. The bill extends that to the treatment, to the drugs, and the vaccine. But the insurance companies, in many cases, are not doing that. So we want to make it quite clear that they have to cover it free, and there's no out-of-pocket expense. And that would be true for the treatment. That would be true for the vaccination as well. Again, we're one country. I can't stress that enough. Now, the other thing that is a major problem, and I want to mention it briefly, is the ability to connect to the internet. Because the bottom line right now is if you're not in school and you're learning remotely or you're working remotely, you need to have an internet connection. And there's a lot of inequality with that around the country, too. So the legislation addresses the digital divide by providing $12 billion to schools and libraries for distance learning, for remote learning. We also continue to help low-income households afford internet service by saying they have to have a discount for service by $50 a month. And we have to continue and enhance the Lifeline program, which helps people of low income pay the bills for those internet connections. And the last thing I want to mention also is, finally, we also prevent the shutoffs for any kind of utilities, water service and other shutoffs, because that's important as well. So thank you again, Madam Chair, for the time, and I yield back to the Speaker.
Gentlelady is recognized.
It's my honor to yield the gentleman from California, the Republican leader, Kevin McCarthy, for 1 minute.
Gentleman's recognized.
I thank the gentlelady for yielding. I just listened to the last speaker. Mr. Speaker, he said he had a bill that he thought and hoped maybe the Republicans could support. Then he used the word united. You know the easiest way to know if Republicans support it? Ask them. Let them in the room. Actually work with them. That's probably a quicker way. The united part's a little difficult if you want to unite people and you leave them out. So let me recap. Having been the leader on this side of the aisle, having worked on numerous COVID relief bills, let's recap what we have gone through each and every time we tried to bring America relief. And you know what? Let's not take my word for it. Let's just read headlines. I think that'll work best. March 22nd, the New York Times. Emergency Economic Rescue Plan in limbo as Democrats block action. Yes, that was the New York Times. That was March 22nd. So let's go to April 9th. Let's go to the NPR. Senate Democrats block GOP effort to boost small business aid. A week later, we watched the Speaker of this House appear on Late Show bragging about blocking the relief while eating high-end ice cream. For reference, there were 22 million unemployed Americans at that time. August 3rd, CBS News says Democrats reject White House offer for short-term extension of unemployment benefits. Let's go to September 10th. Politico. Senate Democrats block Republican COVID relief bill. That's weird. All those headlines I never heard united. I did hear blocking. I did see the speaker. Now let me tell you a little bit of my personal experience. When we wanted to do the CARES Act, the Senate worked with Republicans and Democrats by committee. They put the bill together. You listened to Leader Schumer that night said, yes, we're ready to go. The bill is prepared. I took the red eye and flew back. The speaker did too. We went into the meeting together. And you know what? Just read one of these headlines. The speaker was able to stop it for a whole nother week. How many people were laid off that week? But you know what? There was change in the bill. The arts and the Kennedy Center got a little more. But that was the only thing. And then we were able to pass it. And in there, we were able to produce the PPP for small businesses. Allowed you to pay your rent, your utilities, but you took that money and you paid your employees. Why were you paying your employees? Because government shut down your business. Was it successful? Whoa, was it successful. Did it go to the owner? No, it went to the people. It went to the workers. 50 million workers were saved. It was so powerful, so successful, that the money was running out. So you know what? The Treasury Secretary sent a letter to us and said, you don't need to change anything. Just add a little more money because it's so successful and saving so many jobs. Well, we got our answer. One person stopped it all. And she did it on the Late Show for all of America to see. You remember her smiling as she opened that refrigerator and denied those 22 million people that they were going to join those unemployment lines, and she was going to smile about it because she had her ice cream. And you know what happened? I listened to the speaker's words. She said, you know what? We're going to get this done. We're not going to leave because she has all the power of whether we stay in here and do our job or not. So it doesn't matter if 1/3 on the other side stays home and votes by proxy and still gets their paycheck. She had everybody leave. But then I had hope. I had hope those who were unemployed. I had hope for those who wanted to go back to school and needed the money. Because the speaker called an emergency meeting. Forced us to come back here. So I thought maybe she changed. Maybe actually what she said she meant this time. So she was going to force Congress back, and she did. And you know what? 1/3 on the other side didn't show because they didn't think it was an emergency. Was it about COVID relief? Was it about the American people who were hurting? No. It was about the post office. It was political. So we should have everybody come back. And you know, when you're in the minority, there's only certain rules you have and certain options to put something on the floor. So you know what the Republicans chose to do that day when the Democrats chose to talk about the post office? We put COVID relief on the floor. So there was an option. There was an opportunity. The power of the speaker rose again. She put her thumb down and everybody else on the other side followed. So you know what? The American public lost that day too. They lost one more time. The facts speak for themselves. The common denominator in holding up relief for the American people is very simple. Speaker Pelosi. She spent the last several months stonewalling negotiations instead of working to solve problems. You know why we're here today? Because the Republicans put a discharge petition on the floor. I wonder why we got out early last Friday. The discharge petition must have become ripe where people could sign it. When her members revolted and she responded by recycling an old, unrelated liberal wish list from her first bill. Now at a time when 837 more Americans are filing for unemployment and small businesses are closing permanently, she's wasting Americans' time on yet another multi-trillion-dollar special interest bailout that rewards K Street, not Main Street. Today's so-called compromise isn't realistic are responsible. It's the Pelosi Pipe Dream 2.0, and it's filled with the same radical, reckless, and ridiculous ideas as the first bill. Instead of prioritizing new money for small businesses through the Paycheck Protection Program, it provides a massive tax break to the millionaires and billionaires that are totally unrelated to the coronavirus. Now, let me give you an example. Let's take one person in America that's going to benefit this. You actually ought to rename this bill the Mike Bloomberg bill. Mike Bloomberg is reported to have made $3.5 billion last year. He lives in New York, so if you take the state and local taxes, you combine it, it's 12.5%. So that would mean, if this bill passes, you just gave him $160 million in his pocket. That's an interesting number, $160 million. I wonder how $160 million, if that's how much he would save, how would that affect him? Well, I just read a couple reports, Mr. Speaker. Do you know Michael Bloomberg just put $100 million in to Florida to win it for Joe Biden? And another interesting report, he has given the Democrats $60 million to help them try to keep the majority this year, Mr. Speaker. And what's even more interesting, Michael Bloomberg ran for president. And when he was on stage, you know what he said? He said he bought the Democrats a majority. He said he spent $100 million. He bragged about the individuals that he was able to spend that money on. Some people would wonder, is that money well spent? Some people might wonder if they read that bill, $160 million. What does that mean to the person who's unemployed? I don't think Mike Bloomberg needs that. I know a lot of small businesses. I know a lot of unemployed workers that need the money. But you chose somebody else to respond to. You chose somebody else to reward. Shame on you. Instead of guaranteeing common sense protections against frivolous lawsuits for schools, for small business, for child care, for churches, it gives amnesty, work visas, and taxpayer-funded stimulus checks to illegal immigrants. Lots of times when you read a bill, you see what you prioritize. Instead of boosting jobs, it bails out the cannabis industry. Have you read your own bill? In fact, it mentions cannabis more than it mentions jobs. Did you read the bill? It mentions cannabis more than it mentions jobs. I would challenge anybody in this body to name me one time in their district, in one meeting, that it got mentioned cannabis more than it mentioned jobs of what you're going through right now. Our districts may be different, but I don't believe anybody has that. Instead of reopening the economy, it releases criminals to our communities. Democrats think the economy should be locked down, but they don't think serial killers should be locked up. But the Speaker's latest bill does have a noteworthy difference from the original. At a time when the left-wing mobs are creating chaos in our cities, the bill unequivocally embraces the left defund the police agenda. In fact, it removes $600 million of the emergency funding for state and local enforcement and community-oriented policing that was in the first bill. That's where you cut. Democrats actually believe the top priority of Congress is fewer cops and more criminals. Again, sometimes when you read the bills, it lets people to know their priorities. I listened to the Speaker before. She always told me, bills show your values. I heard the Speaker recently said, the Democrats' values are different than Republicans. If these are your values, yes, they are. Yes, they are. Another striking difference is the tens of billions of dollars for public education to combat misinformation about the coronavirus vaccine. Mr. Speaker, I was happy to hear my colleague on the other side speak a little earlier about the vaccine. I was excited because the Democrat nominee for president, the person he chose to be his running mate, doesn't think people should take the vaccine, even though it's going to be safe and effective and save people's lives. It's interesting. The individual who's running for president on the Democrat side said he is the Democratic Party. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and Speaker Pelosi actively spread in public over the last few weeks misinformation about an ability to save lives. American families, workers, and small businesses will continue to pay the price for Democrats' refusal to take this crisis seriously. It doesn't have to be this way. That's the worst part of all this. It doesn't have to be this way. As the past several months have proven, targeted and timely relief related to COVID hardship actually works. 50 million people got a paycheck because of PPP. I can't tell you how many people got laid off for every time Speaker Pelosi has delayed our bills. I can't tell you how many households and how many businesses have gone bankrupt because she didn't keep her word and say we would stay here and do it. I can't tell you how many more people wonder if their kids could go to college because Nancy Pelosi, our Speaker, called us back for an emergency, but it wasn't about COVID. Instead of using America's suffering as leverage to pass a socialist agenda, Congress should be working on getting the American people back to work safely and back to school safely. Republicans have spent months using every tool available to minority to build on the CARES Act and get support to Main Street. You know, the American public actually ought to see how people vote here. Because just yesterday, we put on the floor a vote for PPP. Every single Democrat voted no. Every single one. It's something they've already supported before. Money is already sitting there, more than $130 billion. This month, our efforts culminated in a discharge petition to reopen the Paycheck Protection Program, which I've said have already saved 51 million jobs. Mr. Speaker, to the American public, what does a discharge petition mean? You see, the Speaker, whoever he or she is, has all the power. They can determine what comes to the floor. But a discharge petition gives the power to the members. All it takes is 218 members to sign it. The public knows what it is. All it would do is take the money that is there for the Paycheck Protection Program and make sure the bill comes to the floor and can be voted on. It'll be really telling to know how many people back home say they support it and how many times they come here and are fearful. Fearful of if there are threats if they sign the discharge petition. The petition is being led by Ranking Member Steve Chabot and Jamie Herrera Butler. I want to thank both of them. Because you know what they have done? They put the American people first. Steve Chabot, Ranking Member of Small Business. When we were crafting the CARES bill, where the PPP was created, yes, it was him who worked so hard to make sure the small business, those who are employed by him, got resources. He did an amazing job. Jamie Herrera Butler, probably one of the most bipartisan members in this body. They didn't do it for political gain. They did it because they listened to their district. As of Friday, this common sense solution officially became open for signatures. Just 218 to earn a vote on the floor. I think it deserves a vote. I think if you took it to the public, they'd pick that a lot sooner than they'd pick what this bill is doing. Mr. Speaker, every member of this body must make a choice tonight. Members who endorse the Speaker's reckless actions can vote yes on this recycled liberal wish list. Then they can go home and explain to small businesses in their district why they prioritized politics over people. They could stand up and say, no, we worked hard for cannabis, a lot harder than we worked for jobs. We made sure the police got cut, and we made sure Mike Bloomberg got paid back. That the $160 million that he's spending in the campaign today, he'll get it all back because the taxpayers will pay him for it. That's exactly what this bill does. It could be the Michael Bloomberg cannabis cut the cops bill. That's power. That's real power. You can make sure Michael Bloomberg does not lose $1 with the $160 million he's invested to make sure Joe Biden and the Democrats stay in power. I mean, if you're that proud of this bill, why don't you name what it does? It makes sure all of America knows cannabis is your #1 priority, not jobs. It makes sure that you take care of those who take care of you in a campaign, Michael Bloomberg. And it makes sure everybody knows you do not care about the safety of our streets, that you're going to cut the police by $600 million. That's one heck of a campaign. That's an amazing. You know what's interesting? So many times the leader, as people have said here, the Speaker of the House, she's the Speaker for all of America. And she always tells us, this will tell you what your values are. And I remember what she recently said, that our values are different. I want to agree with the Speaker. Our values are different. On this side of the aisle, we believe in a commitment to America. We believe that we will defeat this virus because we will create a safe and secure vaccine. Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order.
That's correct.
The gentleman is correct. The House is not in order.
You know the other difference in our values? In our commitment to America? You can read it. You can go to commitmenttoamerica.com. That we actually reject defunding the police. We say we'll spend $1.75 billion more on the police, not cut them $600 million. You know what we'll do with the money? Community policing, more training, and 500,000 body cameras. We also have a plan. We can tell you how many jobs we are going to create. We're going to create 10 million new jobs. I don't know how bad or how big you'll expand the marijuana business, but in here it mentions that more than jobs. We're going to end the dependency on China. We just don't say it, we actually do it. We just came out with a task force that only shows you the problem, shows you the solution. You know what we did different, Mr. Speaker, than what you did with this bill? We didn't do something and say, well, we think the Democrats might like some of this. We actually invited you to join us. Mr. Speaker, the House is still not in order.
The gentleman is correct. The House is not in order.
A year ago, I went to the Speaker. And I asked her that we could create a bipartisan committee dealing with China. China is representing its 71st anniversary. There's no more freedom in China today than there was 31 years ago in Tiananmen Square. It took me 8 months of negotiation with the Democrat leadership till they finally said yes. We actually picked the people who were going to be on it. And right before we went to name it, they decided no, they didn't want to be a part of it. This was before COVID. I just don't understand it. I just don't understand that our values are that different. Members who want to bring an end to the Speaker's excuses, who believe this is a moment to work for Main Street, not K Street, should vote no and sign the Herrera-Butler-Shabbat discharge petition. By adding your name, you will be advancing a fair process towards making bipartisan law for American families. That's what our neighborhoods need. They need us to legislate for them, not posture for November. I urge all my Democrat colleagues to join us. make a commitment to America. Not to Michael Bloomberg, not to cannabis. Focus on actually who voted you to get here. Do not be so intimidated because somebody supplies so many millions of dollars to try to persuade people to vote a certain way. Listen to those who've been laid off. I know what it's like to have a dream, to open a small business. I know what the hardships are like. But I have not witnessed personally the hardship of what the virus has done when they've been shut down. The least I would expect is this body that would act, would put people before politics. But unfortunately, yes, the values of one side are different than ours. Every chance we have put forth relief for the American public. And the only opportunity we have now is a discharge petition. Because no one definitely can vote for this. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentlelady from New York is recognized.
I am very pleased to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Georgia, the distinguished chair of the Agricultural Subcommittee of Appropriations, Mr. Bishop.
The gentleman is recognized.
I thank the gentlelady for yielding. And Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of this updated HEROES Act. This bill is about people and not about politics. As chairman of the Agriculture, Rural Development, and FDA Subcommittee on Appropriations, I'd like to highlight the important provisions of this bill from my section, which touches the lives of every American in some way. It provides a total of $15.4 billion to help Americans put food on the table, to keep their homes, protect agricultural products from pests.
The gentleman may continue.
To keep their homes, protect agricultural products from pests and diseases, deliver stress assistance to our farmers and producers, and evaluate coronavirus vaccine applications. We provide $10 billion to SNAP and an additional $400 million for WIC, for working families who've lost their jobs and are laid off due to the COVID-19 emergency. We included $450 million for TFAP food banks and a $1.2 billion for nutrition assistance for the territories. All of these programs will increase food security during this crisis. To keep our food supply safe and thriving during the COVID-19 pandemic, we provided $350 million for the Agriculture Quarantine Inspection Program. We included $2.5 million for the USDA Office of Inspector General to increase their monitoring and oversight activities. For our farmers and producers who are under increased pressure in an already difficult environment, we provided $20 million for activities and services to provide stress assistance resources. For our rural Americans, we included $10 million to address the increased workload for Rural Development Program employees, $2.6 billion for grants to our rural electric co-ops so the lights can stay on, and $309 million to the Rural Housing Service to assist rural tenants who've lost their jobs in this pandemic. Finally, so we can begin to see light at the end of this COVID-19 tunnel, we provide $1.5 million to the Food and Drug Administration to support their safety evaluations for the coronavirus vaccine applications going forward. I urge my colleagues to support this bill. This is a good bill. It's long overdue. The American people need it and deserve it, and I urge my colleagues to pass it.
The gentlelady from Texas is recognized.
I urge a no vote, and I yield back my time.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentlewoman from New York is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I urge a yes vote, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlelady yields back the balance of her time. All time for debate has expired. Pursuant to House Resolution 1161, the previous question is ordered. The question is on the motion by the gentlewoman from New York, Mrs. Lloyd. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. No. The noes have it. The motion is not agreed to.
For a recorded vote, the yeas and nays.
Pursuant to Section 3 of House Resolution 965, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. Until For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition?
Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Grijalva of Arizona pursuant to HRES 965, I inform the House that Mr. Grijalva will vote yea on the motion to concur.
Does the gentleman from New York seek recognition?
As the member designated by Chairwoman Eddie Bernice Johnson pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Chairwoman Johnson will vote yea on the motion to concur. As the member designated by Chairwoman Zoe Lofgren pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Chairwoman Lofgren will vote yea on the motion to concur. As the member designated by Congressman Gregory Meeks pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Congressman Meeks will vote yea on the motion to concur. As the member designated by Congressman Jose Serrano pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Congressman Serrano will vote yea on the motion to concur.
What purpose does the gentleman from Virginia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Rooney pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Mr. Rooney will vote no on the motion to concur. As the member designated by Ms. Moore pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Ms. Moore will vote yes on the motion to concur. As the member designated by Mr. Liu pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Mr. Liu will vote yes on the motion to concur. And as the member designated by Mr. Lowenthal pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Mr. Lowenthal will vote yes on the motion to concur.
What purpose does the gentlelady from Michigan seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, as a member designated by Mrs. Joyce Beatty, pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Ms. Joyce Beatty will vote yes on the motion to concur.
The gentlelady from Delaware seek recognition.
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. DeGette of Colorado, pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Ms. DeGette will vote yea on the motion to concur.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from North Carolina seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Wilson of Florida, pursuant to House Res. 965, I will inform the House that Ms. Wilson will vote yes on the motion to concur.
Does the gentleman from Tennessee seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Lipinski pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Mr. Lipinski will vote no on the motion to concur.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Massachusetts seek recognition?
As the member designated by Ms. Frankel pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Ms. Frankel will vote yes on the motion to concur. As the member designated by Ms. Meng pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Ms. Meng will vote yes on the motion to concur. And as the member designated by Ms. Pingree pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Ms. Pingree will vote yes on the motion to concur.
Does the gentleman from Arizona seek recognition?
As the member designated by Ms. Kirkpatrick pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Ms. Kirkpatrick will vote yes on the motion to concur. As the member designated by Mr. Gallego pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Mr. Gallego will vote yes on the motion to concur.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Chu of California pursuant to House Resolution 965, I inform the House that Ms. Chu will vote yes on the motion to concur.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from California seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Desagne pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Mr. Desagne will vote yes on the motion to concur.
Does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as member designated by Congressmember Napolitano pursuant to House Resolution 965, I inform the House that Congressmember Napolitano will vote yes on the motion to concur.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Michigan seek recognition?
As the member designated by Ms. Kaptur of Ohio pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Ms. Kaptur will vote aye on the motion to concur.
Does the gentleman from Connecticut seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Johanna Hayes, pursuant to House Resolution 965, I inform the House that Ms. Hayes will vote yes on the motion to concur.
Does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Bonnie Watson Coleman pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Ms. Watson Coleman will vote yes on the motion to concur.
What purpose does the gentleman from Maryland seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Pocan of Wisconsin, pursuant to House Resolution 965, I rise to inform the House that Mr. Pocan will vote aye on the motion to concur. As the member designated by Mr. Levin of Michigan, pursuant to House Resolution 965, I inform the House that Mr. Levin will vote aye on the motion to concur.
Does the gentlelady from Florida seek recognition?
As the member designated by Ms. Demings of Florida pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Ms. Demings will vote yea on the motion to move the previous question on H.Res. 1164.
Purpose does the gentlelady from Florida seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I need to amend that. As the member designated by Ms. Demings pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Ms. Demings will vote yea on the motion to concur.
Purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Lawson of Florida, pursuant to House Resolution 965, I inform the House that Mr. Lawson will vote yea on the motion to concur.
Do we wait for says the for what purpose does what purpose does the gentlelady from New Hampshire seek recognition?
As the member designated by Mr. Kennedy pursuant to HRES 965, I inform the House that Mr. Kennedy will vote yes on the motion to concur.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Dina Titus of Nevada, pursuant to HRES 965, I inform the House that Ms. Titus will vote yes on the motion to concur.
Purpose. From Massachusetts seek recognition.
Good evening, Mr. Speaker. As the member designated by the Honorable Mr. James Langevin of Rhode Island, pursuant to House Resolution 965, I'd like to inform the House that Mr. Langevin will vote yes on the motion to concur in the Senate amendment to H.R. 925 with an amendment, the updated HEROES Act. Thank you.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Michigan seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Butterfield of North Carolina pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Mr. Butterfield will vote yes on the motion to concur. As the member designated by Mr. Thompson of California pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Mr. Thompson will vote yes on the motion to concur. As the member designated by Mr. Huffman of California pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Mr. Huffman will vote yes on the motion to concur.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from California seek recognition?
As the member designated by Representative Fudge pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Representative Fudge will vote aye on the motion to concur.
Says, for what purpose? No. What purpose does the gentlelady from Florida seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Mukersel Powell of Florida, pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Ms. Mukersel Powell will vote yea on the motion to concur. And Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Payne of New Jersey, pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Mr. Payne will also vote yea on the motion to concur. And Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Hastings of Florida, pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Mr. Hastings will also vote yea on the motion to concur.
Purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
As a member of the House designated by Mr. Garamendi pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Mr. Garamendi will vote yes on the motion to concur.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Kansas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Richmond pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Mr. Richmond will vote aye on the motion to concur.
Purpose from California seek recognition.
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Roybal Allard pursuant to House Resolution 965, I inform the House that Ms. Roybal Allard will vote yes on the motion to concur.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Virginia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. McEachin pursuant to House Resolution 965, I inform the House that Mr. McEachin will vote yes on the motion to concur.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Illinois seek recognition?
Designated by Mr. Rush pursuant to HRES 965. I inform the House that Mr. Rush will vote yes on the motion to concur.
nays are 207. The motion is adopted. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the vote on ordering the previous question on House Resolution 1164, on which the yeas and nays are ordered. The clerk will report the title of the resolution.
House Calendar Number 96, House Resolution 1164. Resolution providing for consideration of the resolution, House Resolution 1153, condemning unwanted, unnecessary medical procedures on individuals without their full informed consent, and providing for consideration of the resolution, House Resolution 1154, condemning QAnon and rejecting the conspiracy theories it promotes.
The question is on ordering the previous question. Members will record their votes by electronic device.
Purposes, this gentleman from California seek recognition.
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Chu of California, pursuant to House Resolution 965, I inform the House that Ms. Chu will vote yes on the previous question.
Purposes, does the gentlelady from California seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Representative Fudge pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Representative Fudge will vote aye on the previous question.
You have to wait. For what reason does the gentleman from the Commonwealth of Virginia seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Dina Titus of Nevada, pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Ms. Titus will vote yes on the previous question.
Purpose, does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Roybal Allard, pursuant to House Resolution 965, I inform the House that Ms. Roybal Allard will vote yes on the previous question.
Purpose, does the gentlelady from Delaware seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. DeGette of Colorado, pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Ms. DeGette will vote yes on the previous question.
Purposes, does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Grijalva of Arizona, pursuant to H.Res. 965, I inform the House that Mr. Grijalva will vote yea on the previous question.